Marcus's declaration was a death sentence, delivered not in a whisper, not even with a semblance of privacy. It ripped through the hushed elegance of the restaurant, a jagged tear in the fabric of polite society. His voice, sharp and accusatory, sliced across the pristine white tablecloth, past the anemic flicker of the votive candle, reaching a volume that dragged the attention of the elderly couple 2 tables over from their carefully curated salmon dinners. Sarah's fork, mid-twirl with the offending pasta, a dish chosen with excruciating care to avoid any potential fault in Marcus's eyes, froze, suspended in the air. The noodles, once a source of anxiety, now seemed like macabre evidence at a crime scene, a tableau of her own inadequacy. What was the crime? Breathing wrong? Existing while female? I asked you a simple question, Marcus pressed, his jaw a rigid line. Were you flirting with the waiter? No, she managed, her voice betraying her with its meekness. I said, thank you, that's all. You smiled at him. The words dripped with venom. I was being polite. You don't smile at other men. His hand, a predator unleashed, shot across the table, clamping onto her wrist. Not hard enough to leave a mark, never hard enough to raise eyebrows in public, but with a bone-deep pressure that radiated pain up her arm. Do you understand me? It was always this way. The idyllic dinner, his idea, meticulously planned and executed, began with a veneer of charm. He'd dictate her order, of course, knowing intimately what flattered a woman of her size, or so he claimed. He'd critique her makeup, lamenting her choice of the rose lipstick over the infinitely more flattering burgundy, which he insisted masked her pallor. Then, inevitably, the switch would flip. A perceived slight, a phantom transgression, and she would pay the price later, in the suffocating confines of the car, at home, in a relentless barrage of small cuts that left no visible wounds. I understand, she whispered, defeated. Good. He released her wrist, the absence of pressure a small reprieve, and raised his wine glass. Because when we get home, you and I are going to have a long conversation about respect. The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating as smoke. Sarah's stomach churned. She knew these conversations. They commenced with him barricading the bedroom door, progressed to her pinned against the cold wall. His voice a rising storm, his face looming too close, his presence stealing every molecule of oxygen from the room. They concluded with her abject apologies for sins she hadn't committed, promises of unattainable perfection. Tears staining her pillow while he slept beside her, oblivious and unrepentant. 3 years. 3 years of this insidious erosion, and she was still shackled, unable to break free. She glanced down at the engagement ring, a painfully modest diamond he'd chosen unilaterally, its weight a tangible symbol of her captivity. Eat your food, Marcus snapped. You're making a scene. She was making a scene. In his world, it was always her fault. With trembling hands, she reached for her fork. The pasta swam in her vision, distorted by the tears she stubbornly refused to release. Not here. Not in public. That would only fuel his rage. She hadn't noticed the man at the next table, not at first. He was dining alone, a rare sight on a Friday night at Morello's, one of the city's most prestigious and exorbitant Italian establishments. Patrons typically arrived in pairs or groups, adorned in their finery, poised to celebrate anniversaries or seal lucrative deals. This man, however, appeared to have materialized from a different plane entirely. He wore a charcoal suit, impeccably tailored to suggest wealth and power. His dark hair, swept back with distinguished streaks of gray at the temples, framed a face that seemed destined for the silver screen of old Hollywood. A strong jaw, sculpted cheekbones, eyes that appeared black in the restaurant's subdued lighting. And those eyes were riveted on Marcus, not with mere curiosity, but with something far more ominous, a cold, predatory intensity. Sarah caught the fleeting glance by accident as she reached for her water glass. The man's gaze flickered to her, a momentary connection. She saw something flicker across his face, a flicker of recognition, perhaps, or simply interest. Then his attention returned to Marcus, laser-focused and unwavering. He had heard everything. Of course, he had. Marcus had practically broadcast their private hell to the entire restaurant. Heat surged through Sarah's cheeks. Enduring this nightmare was agonizing enough. Having an audience amplified the shame tenfold. She tried to shrink into her chair, yearning for invisibility. Perhaps if she remained silent, motionless, the moment would dissipate. Marcus would regain his composure, they'd finish the meal, and, against all odds, he might forget his threat by the time they arrived home. Hope, however misguided, died hard. "I'm going to the restroom," Marcus announced, tossing his napkin onto the table with dismissive contempt. He leaned in close, his breath hot and stale against her ear. "Don't even think about going anywhere." As if she would, as if she could. He strode away, and Sarah exhaled for the first time in what felt like an eternity. That's when the man from the next table moved. He didn't request permission, didn't offer an introduction. He simply lifted his wine glass, filled with something red and undoubtedly expensive, and slid into Marcus's vacant chair as if he belonged there. Sarah's head snapped up, her pulse hammering against her ribs. "What are you?" "My name is Luca." His voice was a low rumble, imbued with a European accent she couldn't immediately place, or Italian, perhaps, which would explain his presence at this particular restaurant. "And you need to listen very carefully, because your boyfriend will be back in approximately 90 seconds. Her heart threatened to explode. "Please, you don't understand. If he sees you here, he won't hurt you tonight." The certainty in his voice stopped her cold. There was no ambiguity, no hesitation, only a statement of fact. "You don't know that," Sarah whispered, desperation clinging to her words. "You don't know him. I know men like him." Luca's dark eyes held hers captive. "I've known hundreds. They're all the same. They find someone gentle, someone kind, and they break them down piece by piece until there's nothing left but fear." The way he said it, with such detached understanding, such intimate knowledge of the insidious pattern, made Sarah's throat constrict. "I'm fine," she said automatically, reciting the well-worn script. It was what she always said, what she'd repeated to her mother, her friends, the concerned coworker who had once inquired about the fading bruise on her arm. "Really, I'm fine. It's just, he has a temper sometimes, but he doesn't mean every word." Luca leaned forward slightly, his gaze unwavering. "And it will get worse. You know this already." She did. God help her, she did. "Why do you care?" The question escaped her, laced with more bitterness than she intended. "You don't even know me." Something flickered across Luca's face, an emotion too fleeting to decipher. "Let's just say I have a particular dislike for men who threaten women in public restaurants." "He's coming back." Sarah could see Marcus's reflection in the window, stalking purposefully toward their table. Panic seized her chest. "Please, you have to go. If he sees you sitting here, let him see. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Luca didn't move, didn't even glance in Marcus's direction, though he must have sensed the man's impending arrival. "The question is, do you want help? Or do you want to keep pretending that this is love?" His words struck her with the force of a physical blow. Before she could formulate a response, Marcus was upon them. "What the hell is this?" His face was flushed crimson, a color Sarah recognized as a harbinger of imminent danger. "Who the hell are you?" Luca rose slowly, with a fluid grace that belied his size, like a predator unfolding from rest. He was taller than Marcus by several inches, broader through the shoulders. When he turned to face him, Sarah saw Marcus visibly flinch, taking a hesitant step backward. "I'm someone who overheard you threatening this young woman," Luca said calmly, his voice a smooth, dangerous caress. "And I thought I should introduce myself." "This is none of your business." Marcus's hand clenched into a fist. "Sarah, get your things. We're leaving." Sarah began to rise, driven by instinct, obedience, fear. But Luca's voice halted her. "She's not going anywhere with you tonight." The restaurant had fallen silent. Other diners were watching now, some with undisguised fascination, others feigning interest in their menus while surreptitiously tracking every word. Marcus laughed. A hollow, mirthless sound. Listen, buddy. I don't know who you think you are. Luca Moretti. The name dropped like a stone into still water, its impact immediate and profound. Sarah saw Marcus's face undergo a startling transformation. The anger seemed to drain away, replaced by something akin to recognition, then stark terror. Moretti, Marcus repeated, his voice losing its aggressive edge. As in? Yes. Luca's expression remained impassive. That Moretti. Sarah had no comprehension of the significance of the name. It meant nothing to her, but it clearly held immense weight for Marcus, enough to leach the color from his face. I didn't know, Marcus stammered, his voice laced with forced conciliation. I didn't realize you were. She's my fiancée. This is just a private matter between us. Nothing you said tonight was private. Luca gestured to the surrounding restaurant. Everyone here heard you, including me, and I've decided I don't like it. Look, I apologize if I was out of line. You were. But Sarah and I have been together for 3 years. We're getting married. This is just a misunderstanding. Luca turned his attention to Sarah, his gaze intense and searching. Is that true? Is this a misunderstanding? Every eye in the restaurant was upon her now. Sarah felt the weight of their stares, the crushing pressure to say the right thing, to defuse the situation, to protect Marcus, even though he had never once extended that courtesy to her. Her voice caught in her throat, a strangled whisper. Tell him, Marcus pleaded, his tone bordering on frantic. Tell him this is all a mistake. Tell him you want to leave with me. She looked at Marcus, the man she had dedicated 3 years to pleasing, to loving, to fixing, the man who consistently made her feel insignificant, worthless, and perpetually afraid. Then she looked at Luca, a stranger who had no vested interest in defending her, yet was doing so without hesitation. No, Sarah whispered, the word feeling like a plunge off a precipice. What? Marcus's face contorted in disbelief. Sarah. No, she said again, louder this time, finding strength in the act of defiance. It's not a misunderstanding. I don't want to go home with you tonight. You don't mean that. You're confused. This guy is confusing you. I think the lady was clear. Luca's voice sliced through Marcus's protests like a honed blade. She's not leaving with you. Like hell. Marcus reached for Sarah's arm, his movements clumsy and desperate. He didn't get close. Luca moved with a speed that defied his size, a blur of controlled power. One moment he was standing beside the table. The next, he had Marcus's wrist locked in his grip, bending it at an unnatural angle that elicited a sharp gasp of pain. If you touch her, Luca said, his voice dangerously soft, you will lose that hand. Do we understand each other? Marcus nodded frantically, his eyes wide with fear. Luca released him with a subtle push that sent Marcus stumbling backward. 2 men in dark suits. Sarah hadn't even registered their presence before, but they seemed to materialize from the shadows of the restaurant, flanking Marcus with implacable expressions, their presence radiating an unmistakable threat. Escort Mr. Luca paused, glancing at Sarah with a questioning look. Brennan, she supplied weakly. Escort Mr. Brennan out, Luca finished, his voice regaining its commanding tone. And make sure he understands that he's not welcome back at any establishment I have an interest in, which in this city is most of them. The men nodded, their movements precise and coordinated. They didn't need to physically restrain Marcus. Their mere presence was enough to propel him toward the exit. Marcus shot Sarah a venomous glare over his shoulder, a mixture of fury and betrayal contorting his features. This isn't over, he spat out. You hear me? This isn't. One of the suited men uttered something low and sharp, effectively silencing him. Marcus subsided, his face a mask of impotent rage, and then he was gone, swallowed by the night. Sarah remained frozen in her chair, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. It had all transpired so swiftly. One moment, she had been bracing herself for the worst night of her life. The next, Marcus was being frog-marched out of the restaurant by men who looked like they consumed individuals like him for breakfast. Luca settled back into his own chair, then hesitated and looked at her, his expression concerned. "You should eat something. You've gone pale." "I don't." Sarah's hands shook so violently that she couldn't possibly wield a fork. "I don't understand what just happened. You stood up for yourself, possibly for the first time in a long while." He paused, his gaze penetrating. "But who are you?" She looked at him properly now, truly seeing him for the first time. "What did you say your name was?" "Luca Moretti." "And that means something." Marcus knew that name. Marcus is a small, insecure man who watches too many movies and understands just enough about this city's power structure to be afraid of the right people. "Are you?" Sarah couldn't bring herself to articulate the question fully. "Are you a criminal?" Luca smiled slightly, a fleeting, enigmatic expression that didn't reach his eyes. "That depends entirely on who you ask. But yes, I suppose by some definitions, I am." She should have been terrified, should have snatched her purse and bolted for the exit. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why did you help me?" He was silent for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer, tinged with a hint of sadness. "My sister was engaged to a man like Marcus once. By the time I realized how dire the situation had become, it was almost too late." "Is she?" "She's safe now, married to a good man, living in Tuscany with more olive trees than she knows what to do with." His expression hardened, the vulnerability replaced by a steely resolve. "But I learned something from that experience. Learned that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply refuse to look away." Tears streamed down Sarah's face now, silent and unchecked. "I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. We live together, and all my things are at his apartment, and my car is at his place." "Breathe," Luca said gently, his voice a soothing balm. "One problem at a time. Where is his apartment?" She gave him the address, her voice trembling. Luca retrieved his phone and made a brief call, speaking rapidly in Italian, his tone authoritative. The conversation concluded with what sounded like firm instructions. "In 1 hour," he told Sarah, "all of your belongings will be packed and removed from that apartment. They will be taken to a secure location until you decide where you'd like them delivered. Your car will also be retrieved and brought to you." "I can't. That's too much." "I can't ask you to." "You didn't ask. I offered." He signaled to their waiter, who appeared instantly, seemingly summoned by an invisible force. "Please bring the lady some hot tea and perhaps your finest tiramisu. The shock will fade faster with sugar." The waiter nodded deferentially and disappeared to fulfill the request. Sarah wiped her eyes with her napkin, attempting to regain a semblance of composure. "I don't even know how to thank you." "Don't thank me yet. The hard part is just beginning." "What do you mean?" "Marcus won't let this go easily. Men like him never do. They view women as property, as extensions of their own ego. When you walk away, and you are walking away, he will try to get you back. And when that doesn't work, he will try to hurt you." His words sent a shiver of ice down her spine. "So, what am I supposed to do?" Luca reached into his jacket and extracted a business card. It was heavy cardstock, the lettering embossed, bearing only a phone number and no name. "You call this number if he contacts you, if he shows up at your work, if he sends flowers or texts or shows any sign of not accepting that it's over." Luca's eyes locked on hers, unwavering and intense. "Someone will handle it." "Handle it how?" "In whatever way is necessary to ensure your safety." Sarah stared at the card, her mind racing. She should refuse it, should assert her independence, should tell this dangerous, enigmatic stranger that she was capable of managing her own problems. But she couldn't, not alone, and they both recognized that truth. She accepted the card, her fingers trembling slightly. "There's something else," Luca said, his voice softening. "Something I should tell you." "What?" "When I saw you tonight, sitting across from that man, trying to make yourself invisible." He paused, carefully choosing his words. "I recognized something, not just the fear. I've witnessed that before. But you, something about you felt familiar." We've never met. No, but I think perhaps we were meant to. It was an odd pronouncement, romantic perhaps under different circumstances, but there was no hint of flirtation in his tone, no suggestive undertones, only a simple statement of fact. The waiter returned with the tea and the tiramisu, its delicate layers a stark contrast to the turmoil of the evening. Sarah hadn't thought she could eat, but the first bite of the creamy dessert was so exquisitely decadent that she nearly wept again. Luca watched her, a hint of satisfaction playing on his lips. "What will you do now?" he asked. "I don't know. I have a friend who might let me stay with her for a while. My mother lives upstate, but—" Sarah shook her head, unable to face the inevitable questions. She never liked Marcus. I spent so long defending him to her. I can't face her yet. Your friend. Call her tonight. Don't wait. It's late. But real friends don't care about the hour when someone needs help. He was right, of course. Sarah retrieved her phone and sent a text to Jennifer, her college roommate. They drifted apart over the past few years, their connection strained by Marcus's disapproval. He considered Jennifer a bad influence, too independent and outspoken for his liking. The response arrived within seconds, shattering the silence of the evening. "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you. Are you safe?" Fresh tears welled in Sarah's eyes, a mixture of relief and gratitude. "She's coming." "Good." Luca stood and extracted his wallet, leaving several bills on the table, far exceeding the cost of their meals. "I'll wait with you until she arrives." "You don't have to." "I do." They relocated to the restaurant's lobby, away from the prying eyes of the remaining diners. Sarah clutched her purse and Luca's business card like lifelines, drawing strength from their tangible presence. 20 minutes elapsed in an unexpectedly comfortable silence. Luca made no attempt at small talk, didn't try to fill the void with empty platitudes. He simply stood near the window, hands casually in his pockets, radiating an aura of calm authority that made Sarah feel safer than she had in years. When Jennifer's car screeched to a halt in front of the restaurant, Luca escorted Sarah to the door, his hand lightly touching the small of her back. "Will I see you again?" Sarah asked, the question impulsive and perhaps foolish. Why would she? He had fulfilled his role, rescued the damsel in distress. His part in her story was over. But Luca smiled, a genuine, heart-stopping smile that transformed his entire face, erasing the shadows and revealing a glimpse of warmth beneath the hardened exterior. "I think you will. In fact, I'm quite certain of it." "Why?" "Because I'm going to ask you to have dinner with me. A real dinner, not whatever nightmare you endured tonight. Somewhere you can actually enjoy your food." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. "I don't think I'm ready for—" "Not now," he interrupted gently, his voice understanding. "Take your time. You'll find yourself again. But when you're ready," he gestured to the card still clutched in her hand. "You know how to reach me." Jennifer burst through the restaurant doors like an avenging angel, her blonde hair flying, her eyes blazing with righteous indignation. She took one look at Sarah's tear-stained face and engulfed her in a fierce hug. "I'm going to kill him," Jennifer muttered fiercely. "I'm going to absolutely murder him." "No need," Luca said mildly, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. "I believe that's been handled." Jennifer looked at him properly for the first time, her eyes widening in dawning recognition. "Holy, you're Luca Moretti. You know him?" Sarah asked, confusion clouding her features. "Know of him?" Jennifer's expression shifted to something between awe and terror. "My brother works in real estate. He says half the city's properties are owned by Moretti family trusts." "That's an exaggeration," Luca said dryly, the corners of his mouth twitching. "It's more like a third." He delivered the line with such deadpan seriousness that Sarah almost laughed, a genuine, unforced laugh, for the first time in what felt like an eternity. "Almost. Take care of her," Luca told Jennifer, his voice regaining its earlier intensity. And then, turning to Sarah, he waited until she met his gaze. "What you did tonight took courage. Remember that." Then he was gone, melting back into the restaurant like a phantom, leaving behind an echo of power and intrigue. Jennifer stared after him, her mind reeling. "Okay," she said, shaking her head as if to clear it. So, we're going to need about 6 bottles of wine and 12 hours because you are going to tell me everything. Sarah allowed herself to be led to Jennifer's car, feeling strangely numb and disoriented. As they pulled away from Morello's, she caught one last glimpse of Luca through the rain-streaked window. He had returned to his solitary table, his meal barely touched, a figure shrouded in mystery and quiet contemplation. She wondered what kind of man dined alone at exclusive restaurants on Friday nights, what kind of man intervened in a stranger's private hell without hesitation, what kind of man he really was. The next 2 weeks passed in a surreal blur. Sarah moved into Jennifer's spare room, surrounded by boxes of belongings that had materialized exactly as Luca had promised, each meticulously packed and labeled with care. Her car appeared in Jennifer's driveway the following morning, the keys tucked inside a plain envelope with no return address. Marcus attempted to contact her incessantly, bombarding her with a relentless stream of 17 text messages, 9 phone calls, and 4 emails, each one more desperate than the last, cycling through a predictable range of emotions: anger, pleading apologies, thinly veiled threats, and extravagant promises of change. Sarah blocked his number, blocked his email address, and changed all her passwords, severing every digital connection. She also dialed the number on Luca's business card, her hand trembling as she made the call. The first time was on day 3 when Marcus brazenly showed up at her office, his eyes bloodshot, his demeanor unhinged. He didn't make it past the lobby. 2 security guards materialized from thin air, their presence radiating silent authority, and escorted him from the premises with swift efficiency. Sarah never discovered who had alerted them, but she suspected the invisible hand of Luca Moretti. The second time was on day 7 when she received a tearful voicemail from Marcus's mother, explaining that her son was heartbroken and confused, that Sarah owed him an explanation, that 3 years together should count for something. That call was returned by someone else, a voice Sarah didn't recognize, speaking with quiet conviction. Sarah didn't know what was said, but Marcus's mother never contacted her again. By day 10, the texts ceased, the phone calls stopped, the emails vanished. Marcus seemed to have finally grasped, however reluctantly, that it was truly over. Sarah began sleeping through the night again, started eating regular meals without the constant nausea of anxiety, started remembering what it felt like to breathe deeply, without that persistent knot of dread tightening in her chest. On day 14, she dialed the number on the card once more, but this time she didn't have a problem to report, no threat to neutralize. "I'd like to speak with Luca Moretti," she told the anonymous voice that answered, her heart pounding with anticipation. There was a momentary pause on the other end of the line, a hesitation that amplified her nervousness. "May I tell him who's calling?" "Sarah," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "He'll know." 2 minutes later, Luca's voice came through the line, its familiar timbre sending a jolt of electricity through her system. "Are you all right?" "Yes, actually, I'm better than all right." She took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "I wanted to thank you properly for everything. You don't need to. And I wanted to know if that dinner invitation was still open." Another pause, longer this time, filled with unspoken possibilities. "It is," Luca said finally, his voice softer, more intimate than she had ever heard it. "But I should warn you, Sarah, I'm not a simple man. My life is complicated, dangerous sometimes. If you start down this path, you need to understand what you're walking into." "I think I do." "No," he said gently, with a hint of amusement. "You really don't. But I'd like the chance to explain it to you over dinner, somewhere with better pasta than you had 2 weeks ago." She laughed, a genuine, spontaneous sound that bubbled up from deep within her. Actually laughed, for the first time in recent memory, without a trace of fear or forced politeness. "When?" "Tonight, if you're free. I'll send a car for you at 7. "I can drive myself," she protested, wanting to retain some semblance of control. "Humor me, at least for the first date." First date. The simple phrase sent a flutter of butterflies through her stomach, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. "Okay," Sarah agreed, her voice infused with a newfound lightness. 7 o'clock. The car that arrived that evening was sleek and black, its polished surface gleaming under the streetlights. The driver, impeccably dressed in a proper uniform, opened the door for her with a respectful nod and addressed her as Miss with genuine deference. Jennifer watched from the window, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. "I'm tracking your location," she called out, her voice a mixture of concern and excitement. "And if you're not back by midnight, I'm calling the police." "The police won't help if it's Moretti," the driver said pleasantly, his expression unwavering. "But don't worry, Mississippi Mr. Moretti has instructed me to ensure the lady's complete safety and comfort." Jennifer looked as though she couldn't decide whether to be deeply worried or grudgingly impressed. Sarah settled into the plush leather seat and attempted to quell the frantic beating of her heart. She'd chosen a simple black dress, nothing too ostentatious, but undeniably more elegant than her usual jeans and sweater. Her hair was down, loose around her shoulders, the way Marcus had always despised, but the way she had always secretly preferred. She looked like herself again, vibrant and unburdened, ready to embrace the unknown. Finally, the drive took them outside the city limits, winding its way up into the rolling hills, where the modest houses transformed into sprawling estates, and the estates became miniature kingdoms, hidden behind towering trees and wrought iron gates. They turned through automated iron gates that swung open silently, revealing a long, winding drive flanked by ancient trees, their branches intertwined to form a natural cathedral overhead. The house at the end of the drive the estate was breathtaking, exuding an old-world charm that stood in stark contrast to the flashy, modern architecture Sarah was accustomed to. The stone facade, the towering windows that seemed to drink in the valley view, the meticulously manicured gardens that undoubtedly demanded the constant attention of a small army of groundskeepers. It all spoke of generations of wealth and a life lived on a grand scale. Luca was waiting just inside the massive oak doors, a figure of understated elegance in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt, the sleeves casually rolled to his elbows. He wore no tie, yet somehow, in this setting, he seemed even more formidable than he had in the bustling restaurant. Perhaps it was the power of ownership, the way he commanded this space, that drove home the stark reality of just how far out of her depth Sarah truly was. "You came," he said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through the very stones of the house. His eyes, dark and knowing, held a flicker of something unreadable. "You doubted I would. Hoped you would. Doubted you should." He offered his arm, a gesture both courtly and possessive. "Come. I promise the food will be worth the risk." He led her through the house, a curated masterpiece of art and history. Each room was a testament to impeccable taste and limitless resources, from the priceless antiques to the subtle, yet undeniably expensive, details in the decor. The house opened onto a sprawling terrace that offered a panoramic view of the valley below. The city lights twinkled like a scattering of fallen stars against the velvet backdrop of the night sky. A table was set for two, bathed in the warm glow of candlelight, the wine already breathing in crystal glasses. "No restaurant tonight?" Sarah asked, trying to find her footing in this surreal landscape. "I thought privacy might be appreciated, given that our last public meal didn't exactly go according to plan," Luca replied, a hint of wry amusement in his voice. "That wasn't your fault, was it? I did threaten your ex-fiancé in front of half the city's elite. He deserved it, he did." Luca smoothly pulled out her chair. "But that doesn't mean there won't be consequences. For him, certainly, but possibly for you as well." Sarah sat, her pulse quickening. "What kind of consequences?" "People talk, Sarah. They'll wonder who you are, why I intervened. Some will assume you're connected to my family now, under my protection, which I suppose you are. Is that a bad thing? That depends." He took his own seat across from her, his gaze unwavering. "How do you feel about having your life completely upended?" "I think it already was," she admitted, a small smile playing on her lips. "You just helped me see it." A woman appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, bearing a first course of bruschetta that looked almost too beautiful to eat. She placed the plates before them with practiced grace and retreated as silently as she had come. "I owe you honesty, Sarah," Luca said, his voice softening. About who I am, what I do. You're in the Mafia, she stated, the word hanging in the air. He smiled slightly, a flash of something dangerous in his eyes. Such an ugly word. But yes, essentially my family has been involved in certain enterprises for several generations. Real estate mostly these days, import-export, investments, all technically legal. Technically, we've cleaned up our operations significantly. My father was old school, believed in territory and violence and respect earned through fear. I prefer to think of us as businessmen with a complicated past. But the men who escorted Marcus out, the people who packed my things, that wasn't just business. No, Luca admitted, his expression turning serious. That was personal. I have resources, Sarah, and I chose to use them for you. I'd do it again. Why? Sarah leaned forward, her brow furrowed. I still don't understand why you helped me. You didn't even know me. I told you, my sister. That's not the whole reason. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze intense as he studied her face in the candlelight, searching for something only he could see. No, he said finally, his voice barely a whisper. It's not. Then what? When I saw you in that restaurant, Sarah, trying so hard to be small, to disappear, I saw someone who deserved better. Someone who deserved to be protected, not threatened. And he paused, his voice thick with emotion. I wanted to be the one to protect you. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. That probably sounds antiquated. Luca continued, a hint of self-deprecation in his tone. Patriarchal. I'm aware that modern women don't need men to rescue them. But sometimes, Sarah interrupted softly, her eyes locked on his. It's nice to not have to be strong alone. Their eyes met across the table, a spark igniting in the space between them. The rest of the meal passed in a blur of conversation, the exquisite food and wine fading into the background as they connected on a deeper level. Luca told her about his family, his voice laced with a mixture of affection and regret. 3 siblings, his mother still alive and terrifyingly formidable. His father dead 5 years now. He spoke of growing up in a world where violence was currency and loyalty was everything, about the slow, painstaking process of transforming the family business into something his children might not have to be ashamed of. Sarah, in turn, spoke about her own family, smaller, simpler, but not without its own complexities. Her parents' divorce. Her mother remarried to a man Sarah had never quite trusted. She talked about college, about the marketing degree she'd never really used, about the administrative job she'd taken that paid the bills but didn't fulfill her. She confessed how Marcus had seemed charming at first, attentive, how slowly, so subtly, she hadn't even noticed, he'd started isolating her from friends, making decisions for her, making her doubt herself. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, she said, her voice barely audible. If I could just be what he wanted. Luca finished, his voice laced with understanding. You would have disappeared entirely. That's what men like him want, Sarah. Not partners, dolls. How did you know about your sister? I didn't. Not at first. She hid it well, made excuses for him. But then one day, I stopped by her apartment unannounced and found her with a black eye. She claimed she'd walked into a door. His expression darkened, his jaw tightening. I made sure he never touched her again. What did you do? Nothing he didn't deserve. Luca's voice had gone cold, and he cut off that line of questioning with a simple, nothing you need to worry about. That chapter is closed. They moved from dinner to dessert to coffee, the conversation flowing easier than Sarah would have thought possible. Luca was surprisingly funny when he wanted to be, self-deprecating about his own dramatic tendencies. He asked questions and actually listened to her answers, truly seeing her in a way no one ever had before. It was nearly midnight when Sarah finally checked her phone and saw 17 increasingly frantic messages from Jennifer. I should go, she said reluctantly, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. My friend thinks you've probably murdered me by now. A hint of amusement danced in Luca's eyes. Can't have that. He stood and offered his hand. Instead of leading her back through the house, he walked her to the edge of the terrace where the view stretched out forever, the city lights pulsating in the distance. Sarah, he said quietly, his voice husky in the night air. "I need you to understand something." "What?" "That night in the restaurant, I told myself I was helping a stranger, doing the right thing. But the truth is—" He turned to face her fully, his gaze intense. "The moment I saw you, something shifted inside me. I can't explain it. I just knew." "Knew what?" "That you were going to matter to me. That this, whatever this is, was going to change my life." Sarah's heart was pounding against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the silence of the night. "That's a lot of pressure for a first date." "I know. And if it's too much, if you want to walk away right now, I'll have the driver take you home and you'll never hear from me again. I promise you that." She should say yes. Should thank him for a lovely evening and go back to her safe, normal, uncomplicated life. Instead, drawn to him by an invisible force, she stepped closer. "What if I don't want to walk away? Then I'm going to kiss you, Sarah," Luca said, his voice low and dangerous. "And I'm going to ask to see you again. And again after that, until you're so thoroughly part of my life that the thought of you leaving terrifies me. That's quite a plan. I'm a thorough man." He kissed her then, a kiss that was nothing like the cold, possessive pecks she had endured with Marcus. There was no ownership in it, no demand, just warmth and promise and the undeniable sense of something powerful, something life-altering, beginning. When they broke apart, Sarah was breathless, her senses reeling. "So," Luca said, still holding her close, his eyes searching hers, "may I see you again?" "Yes. Tomorrow? Aren't you supposed to wait 3 days? Play it cool?" "I'm 42 years old, Sarah. I'm done playing games." His hand cupped her face, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheekbone. "Besides, I told you I knew the moment I saw you." "Knew what?" "That I was going to fall in love with you." The next 6 months were like living in a dream, a whirlwind of romance and unexpected joy. Luca courted her properly, showering her with old-fashioned dates, flowers delivered to Jennifer's apartment, texts throughout the day just to check on her. He introduced her to his mother, a tiny woman with steel in her eyes, who took one look at Sarah and announced, "You'll do." Sarah met his siblings. His brother Vincent, serious and quiet, a man of few words but unwavering loyalty. His younger sister, Isabella, who hugged Sarah immediately and whispered, "Thank God, someone normal." And his older sister, Gina, the one who'd been in the abusive relationship, who held Sarah's hands and said, "He told me about you, about what you survived. Welcome to the family." Family. It was a word that held immense weight in Luca's world, a bond thicker than blood and stronger than any oath. Sarah learned what it meant to be connected to the Moretti name. People treated her differently, held doors, offered seats, looked at her with a mixture of respect and fear. She also learned that Luca's world, while mostly legitimate now, still had its dark corners. There were business meetings he couldn't discuss, phone calls he had to take in private, men in suits who appeared at odd hours with urgent information. But he never lied to her. When she asked questions, he answered truthfully, or he told her directly that he couldn't answer. "I won't put you in danger," he said once after a particularly tense evening where 3 calls had interrupted their dinner. "But I also won't insult you with half-truths. This is who I am, Sarah. This is the world I live in. Can you live in it too? Do you want to?" Sarah thought about it. Really thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago, shrinking in restaurant chairs, afraid of her own fiancé. About the woman she was now, standing in Luca's study, asking hard questions and expecting real answers. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I do." Luca crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed her breathless, his relief palpable. "Then we need to make it official." "Official? How?" He pulled a small box from his desk drawer, vintage by the look of it, the velvet worn smooth with age. When he opened it, Sarah gasped. The ring inside was stunning, an emerald surrounded by diamonds set in platinum, a masterpiece of old-world craftsmanship, clearly an heirloom. "This was my grandmother's," Luca said, his voice thick with emotion. "She gave it to me years ago, told me to save it for someone worthy, someone strong." He dropped to one knee, his gaze unwavering. "Marry me, Sarah." Not because I saved you. We both know you saved yourself. But because I love you. Because you make me want to be better than the sum of my family's sins. Because I look at you and see my future. Sarah's hands were shaking, tears streaming down her face. Yes, 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 I'll marry you. He slid the ring on her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. They were married 3 months later in a small, intimate ceremony at Luca's family estate, surrounded by the people they loved. Sarah's mother came, cried happy tears, and admitted she'd been worried after the Marcus situation, but now saw that her daughter had finally found a real man. Jennifer was maid of honor and spent the entire reception making jokes about how she'd always known Sarah would either end up with a prince or a mob boss, and technically Luca was both. Marcus sent flowers. They were intercepted before Sarah ever saw them, and she never asked what happened to them. Some things were better left unknown. On their wedding night, Luca carried her over the threshold of their home. His home, now their home, and kissed her in the foyer as if it was the first time. His passion igniting a fire within her. I have something to tell you, he said, his voice low and husky. Should I be worried? That depends. How do you feel about Sicily? I've never been. We're going for 3 weeks, just us. My cousin has a villa on the coast. No business calls, no interruptions, just you and me and very good wine. Sarah wrapped her arms around his neck, her heart overflowing with happiness. Sounds perfect. There's something else. What? I'm opening a foundation for women leaving abusive relationships, housing assistance, legal help, counseling, and I want you to run it. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes wide with surprise. What? You know what it's like, Sarah. You understand what they need, what they're afraid of, and you have a strength that could help others find theirs. He touched her face, his gaze intense. I'm putting significant money behind it, enough to make a real difference. But I need someone I trust at the helm, someone who actually cares, not just someone looking for a salary. Tears welled in Sarah's eyes, her voice thick with emotion. Luca, you don't have to decide now. Think about it. But I believe you could change lives, Sarah. The way you changed mine. The way I changed yours? She echoed, her voice barely a whisper. You saved me. No, he said firmly, his eyes locking on hers. You saved yourself, Sarah. I just made sure you were safe while you did it. There's a difference. She kissed him then, deep and long and full of promise. A kiss that sealed their fate and bound them together forever. Later, lying in bed with the city lights filtering through the windows, Sarah thought about that night in the restaurant. About the woman she'd been, scared, small, trapped. About the moment everything changed. What are you thinking? Luca asked, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, drawing her close. That I should probably send Marcus a thank you card. Why? Because if he hadn't yelled that threat, if you hadn't overheard, if everything hadn't happened exactly the way it did. She turned to look at her husband, her heart overflowing with love. I might never have found you. You would have, Luca said with certainty, his voice filled with conviction. Maybe not that night. Maybe not for months or years, but eventually, somehow we would have found each other. I believe in fate, in something like that. Sarah settled back against his chest, the emerald ring catching the light. I'm glad it was that night, though. I'm glad I didn't waste any more time. So am I. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other. 2 broken pieces that had somehow found a way to fit together perfectly, creating something stronger and more beautiful than either could have ever imagined alone. And in the morning, Sarah woke up not to threats or criticism or fear, but to the smell of coffee and the sound of her husband singing off-key in the kitchen. His voice filled with a joy she had never heard before. She smiled, got out of bed, and went to join him, eager to start their new life together. After all, this was only the beginning. The real story, their story, was just getting started. 3 months into their marriage, Sarah was reviewing grant applications in her new office, a converted brownstone in the city's historic district, funded entirely by Luca, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her hesitate, a nagging feeling that she couldn't ignore, and she picked up. Sarah Moretti, she said, her voice professional and calm. A woman's voice, shaking and barely audible, came through the speaker. Yes, my name is Rachel. I got your number from the foundation website. I didn't know who else to call. Sarah sat up straighter, her senses on high alert. Are you safe right now? I think so. I'm at a coffee shop, but he knows where I work, where my sister lives, where I go to the gym. He knows everything. Her voice cracked with fear. I left him 2 days ago, and he's been sending me messages. He says if I don't come home by tonight, he's gonna make sure I regret it. Listen to me carefully, Rachel, Sarah said, her voice firm but reassuring, already pulling up her database on her computer. What's your full name? Rachel Chen. She hesitated, her voice laced with uncertainty. No, wait. I saw on your requirements that you only help your foundation focuses on. Sarah cut her off, her voice leaving no room for doubt. My foundation helps women who need help. Period. Full name. Rachel? Rachel Chen. I'm in Midtown at the Starbucks on 5th and 32nd. Stay there. Don't move. I'm sending someone to you right now. Sarah hung up and immediately called the number she'd memorized for emergencies. The one she prayed she'd never have to use. Not Luca's direct line. He was in meetings all day, and she didn't want to risk disturbing him unless absolutely necessary. But Vincent's. Her brother-in-law answered on the first ring, his voice calm and efficient. Sarah? Vincent, I need a pickup. Woman in danger. Starbucks on 5th and 32nd. Her ex is threatening her. On it. 10 minutes. Vincent, she might be nervous about the men you send. I'll send Maria. She's good with this. Thank you, Vincent. Sarah hung up and immediately called Rachel back. Help is coming, Rachel. A woman named Maria. She'll be in a gray sedan. She's going to take you somewhere safe. I don't have any money for. You don't need money. That's not how this works. 20 minutes later, Rachel was safe in one of the foundation's emergency apartments. A furnished one-bedroom in a building with excellent security and no public records tying it to the Moretti family. Sarah met her there with a bag of groceries and a burner phone. A lifeline to a new, safer existence. Rachel was younger than Sarah expected. Mid-20s, with dark circles under her eyes and a bruise on her collarbone that she kept trying to hide with the collar of her sweater. She looked up at Sarah, her eyes wide with disbelief. You're really her? Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman from the restaurant. Everyone's been talking about it online. Sarah blinked, taken aback. There's what? Someone posted about seeing him threaten your ex-boyfriend at Morello's. Kind of went viral. People have been calling you the Mafia boss's bride. Rachel's expression crumpled, her eyes filling with tears. I'm sorry. I know that's invasive. When I saw your foundation, I thought maybe you'd understand. I do understand. Sarah set down the groceries and sat beside her on the worn sofa, her presence offering a sense of calm amidst the storm. Tell me about him, Rachel. The story that poured out was achingly familiar, a chilling echo of Sarah's own past. The controlling behavior that started small, disguised as love and concern. The isolation from friends and family, the subtle manipulation designed to chip away at her self-esteem. The escalating anger, the unpredictable outbursts, the constant fear of saying or doing the wrong thing. The feeling of being trapped, of having no way out. He tracks my phone, Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. I had to leave it at home when I ran. That's why I borrowed someone's phone to call you. Good. That was smart. Sarah reassured her, her voice filled with genuine empathy. We'll get you a new phone, a new number. He'll never be able to reach you again. How long were you together? 2 years. We were supposed to get married next month. Rachel twisted her hands in her lap, her eyes filled with a mixture of shame and despair. Everyone thinks he's so great. Successful lawyer, volunteers at the animal shelter, coaches Little League. Nobody believes me when I try to tell them what he's really like. I believe you, Rachel, Sarah said softly, reaching over and gently squeezing her hand. But you don't even know me. I don't need to know you, Sarah replied, her voice filled with unwavering conviction. I know him. Maybe not his name or his face, but I know the type. I know the patterns, the manipulations, the lies. And I know that you're not crazy, Rachel. You're not overreacting, and you're definitely not alone anymore." Rachel started crying in earnest, the tears flowing freely, washing away months, perhaps years, of pent-up fear and pain. Sarah simply let her cry, offering tissues and quiet comfort until the sobs finally subsided into hiccups. "What happens now?" Rachel asked, her voice hoarse and raw. "Now you rest, Rachel. You're safe now. That's the most important thing. Tomorrow we'll talk about next steps, restraining order, new job if you need it, therapy, referrals. But tonight, you're safe. The door locks, the building has security, and nobody knows you're here except me and the people who brought you." "What about him? What if he finds me?" Sarah thought about the vast resources at her disposal, the invisible network of protection that came with her last name, the unwavering loyalty of Luca and his family. She thought about the fear in Rachel's eyes, the desperation in her voice, the bruise on her collarbone hidden beneath her sweater. She hardened her resolve. "He won't, Rachel. I promise you that. And if he tries, he'll regret it." She stayed until Rachel fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from fear and adrenaline, her body finally surrendering to the safety she so desperately craved. Then she locked up carefully and headed home, the weight of Rachel's story settling heavy on her heart. Luca was waiting in the kitchen, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up, reading something on his tablet. He looked up when she entered, his eyes instantly focusing on her face, his expression softening with concern. He immediately set everything aside and came to her, his presence radiating warmth and strength. "Rough day? New intake. Woman named Rachel. Her ex is making threats. Do we need to handle it?" Sarah loved that. He said we, not I'll handle it, not let me take care of it. We, a partnership, a shared burden, a united front against the darkness. "I told her he wouldn't find her. I need to make sure that's true." Luca pulled out his phone and made a call, his voice low and authoritative. The conversation was brief, mostly in Italian, ending with what sounded like a confirmation. He hung up and turned to Sarah, his eyes filled with a fierce protectiveness. "Vincent's already running background on the ex. We'll know everything about him by morning. If he's a legitimate threat, we'll neutralize it." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Neutralize how?" He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "However necessary, Sarah. Legal channels first, of course. We always try to do things the right way, to stay within the bounds of the law. But if those don't work..." He let the sentence hang in the air, unfinished, unspoken. Sarah knew she should probably be bothered by how easily he talked about circumventing the law, about operating outside the established systems. She should probably insist that they do everything by the book, that they adhere to the principles of justice, that they trust in the system. But she remembered Rachel's bruised collarbone, her shaking hands, her terror-filled eyes. She remembered her own fear, her own helplessness, her own desperation for someone to believe her. "Okay," she said simply, her voice barely a whisper. They went to bed, but Sarah couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Rachel, about her stolen youth, her shattered dreams, her agonizing fear. She kept thinking about how many other women were out there right now, trapped in the same nightmare, living in the shadows, silenced by fear, their voices unheard. Her foundation had helped 14 women in 3 months. 14 lives changed, 14 stories rewritten, 14 beacons of hope ignited in the darkness. But how many more were there? How many more Rachels were out there, suffering in silence, waiting for someone to reach out, to offer a hand, to say, "You are not alone." At 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and went downstairs to make tea, hoping the quiet solitude would bring some measure of peace. She was standing at the kitchen window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, when she heard the sound. A car door slamming, footsteps crunching on gravel, a sound that shattered the peaceful silence of the night. Their house had state-of-the-art security, a fortress of gates, cameras, motion sensors, and guards who patrolled the grounds around the clock. Nobody should be able to just walk up to the door unannounced. especially at this hour. Sarah's phone was upstairs, charging in the bedroom. The panic button was next to the bed, a lifeline she could activate with a single touch. She was standing in the kitchen in her pajamas, completely exposed through the large windows, vulnerable and alone. The doorbell rang, its shrill chime echoing through the empty house. Every instinct screamed at her not to answer it, to hide, to call for help, to wait for Luca and the security team to arrive. But something else, maybe curiosity, maybe a morbid fascination, maybe a reckless disregard for her own safety, made her walk to the front door and check the security monitor. Marcus stood on her doorstep, bathed in the harsh glare of the security lights. Her Marcus, her ex-fiancé, the man she hadn't seen since that fateful night at the restaurant, the man who had once held her heart in his hands and then crushed it beneath his heel. He looked terrible, a shadow of his former self. Thinner, his face gaunt, his eyes ringed with the kind of hollow-eyed exhaustion that spoke of weeks without proper sleep, his body radiating a desperate energy that sent a shiver of unease down her spine. He was wearing a wrinkled suit, his hair uncombed, his tie askew, as if he'd thrown himself together in a fit of frantic desperation. And he was holding something that made Sarah's blood run cold. A gun. She didn't open the door. Instead, her hand trembling, she pressed the intercom button, her voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, leave now." His head snapped up toward the camera, his eyes widening with a mixture of relief and desperation. "Sarah, thank God. I need to talk to you. I have nothing to say to you. Leave or I'm calling the police. Please, Sarah." His voice cracked with emotion, a plea filled with a desperate yearning. "Please, I just need 5 minutes. Just let me explain." "Explain what, Marcus? How you ended up standing on my doorstep with a weapon?" I'm not." He looked down at the gun in his hand as if surprised to find it there, his face contorted with a mixture of confusion and denial. "I'm not here to hurt you, Sarah. I'd never hurt you. I love you. You threatened me multiple times, Marcus. You terrorized me. You controlled me. I was angry, Sarah. I didn't mean." He took a step closer to the door, his eyes pleading. "Everything fell apart after you left. I lost my job. My family won't talk to me. Everyone acts like I'm some kind of monster. Because you are, Marcus." "No." He slammed his free hand against the door, making Sarah jump, the sound echoing through the silent house. "No, Sarah. I took care of you. I protected you. I gave you everything. You took everything, Marcus. You controlled me. You isolated me. You made me doubt myself. You took my life and you squeezed it until there was nothing left. And you threw it away, Sarah. You threw it all away for some criminal. Luca is my husband, Marcus. He loves me. He respects me. He treats me like an equal. He's a mobster, Sarah." Marcus's voice rose to a shout, filled with bitterness and resentment. "He's a monster. He threatened me, had his thugs follow me for weeks. I couldn't go anywhere without seeing them. Couldn't apply for jobs without getting rejection letters. He ruined my life." "You ruined your own life, Marcus. I loved you, Sarah." The words echoed in the night, a desperate plea for understanding. "I gave you 3 years of my life, and you replaced me in 3 months. Like I meant nothing. Like what we had meant nothing." Sarah's hand was shaking as she reached for her phone, her finger hovering over the emergency call button. But before she could dial, she heard it. Footsteps behind her, quiet but unmistakable. The sound of someone moving stealthily through the house. She turned, her heart leaping into her throat, and found Luca standing on the stairs, his presence a silent promise of protection. He was barefoot, wearing only sleep pants, his chest bare, his muscles tense. His hair was tousled, his eyes dark and focused, his expression cold and dangerous. He had his phone in one hand, his finger poised over the call button, and in the other he held a gun. Sarah had never actually seen Luca with a gun before, had known he owned them, obviously, had understood the necessity of them in his world. But seeing him holding one now, moving with the kind of practiced ease that spoke of years of training, of countless hours spent honing his skills, drove home exactly who she'd married. This wasn't just a wealthy businessman, a charming philanthropist, a loving husband. This was a man who lived in a world where violence was a language, where power was wielded without hesitation, where loyalty was rewarded and betrayal was punished. He put a finger to his lips, silencing her, then gestured for her to step away from the door, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face on the monitor. Sarah moved back slowly, her heart pounding in her chest, her mind racing. Luca took her place at the intercom, his presence radiating an aura of quiet command that filled the room. "Marcus," he said calmly, his voice low and steady, but with an undercurrent of steel that sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "You have 10 seconds to put the weapon down and walk away." "You?" Marcus's voice through the speaker dripped with venom, his face contorted with rage. "This is your fault, Luca. All of it. You stole her from me. You ruined my life. You think you can just buy her love with your money and your power?" "I'm aware you think so," Luca replied, his voice devoid of emotion. 9 seconds. "You took her from me, you bastard. She was mine. She belonged to me. I'll never forgive you for this. She was never yours to take, Marcus. She belongs to herself." 7 seconds. "I'll kill you, Luca. I'll kill both of you. You think you can just get away with this? You think your money can protect you? You can't just." 5 seconds. "My security team is already surrounding you, Marcus. You have 3 guns pointed at your head right now. They're just waiting for my command." 4 seconds. "Think very carefully about your next choice, Marcus. This is the last chance you're going to get." Sarah could see it on the monitor, Marcus's face shifting through a kaleidoscope of emotions, his eyes darting back and forth, his body trembling. Rage to fear to desperation, his hand tightening on the gun, his knuckles white. "Don't, Marcus," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, her hand reaching out toward the monitor as if she could somehow stop him. "Please don't make him do this." 2 seconds. Marcus dropped the gun. The sound of the weapon hitting the pavement echoed through the night. A final surrender. A definitive end to their twisted and tragic story. He collapsed to his knees right there on the doorstep, his body shaking with great, heaving sobs that seemed to tear through his very soul. "I'm sorry," he sobbed, his voice cracking with grief and remorse. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. I didn't mean. I wasn't going to. I just wanted her to see. I just wanted her to understand what she did to me." 4 men in dark suits materialized from the shadows exactly as Luca had promised. Their movements silent and efficient, their faces impassive. They surrounded. Marcus stood frozen, weapons trained, awaiting Luca's command. Lucas, his face grim, spoke into his cell phone. "Don't kill him," he said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Just ensure he never comes back. Ever." He ended the call, his gaze softening as he turned to Sarah. She was trembling, the delayed shock crashing over her. Her entire body vibrated with adrenaline and disbelief. Luca gently placed his weapon on the hall table and drew her close. "Hey, you're safe now, I've got you." "He had a gun," she whispered, her voice thick with residual fear. "He came here with a gun. I know. He could have. If I hadn't acted, he could have. But I did act. And you're fine. We're fine." Through the arched window, Sarah watched, her breath catching in her throat, as the security team hauled Marcus to his feet. All fight had drained from him. He moved like a marionette with severed strings, stumbling towards the black SUV. "What will they do to him?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Nothing permanent," Luca assured her, his tone firm but reassuring. "They'll take him to the police. Tell them we found an armed intruder on our property. He'll be arrested, likely charged with trespassing and weapons violations. Given his previous behavior and this stunt, he'll likely see jail time. Will he come back?" "No," Luca's voice brooked no argument. "I'll make sure of it. Whatever it takes." Sarah pulled back to look at him, her eyes searching his. "How did you know? How did you get downstairs so fast?" "The security system alerts my phone the moment anyone approaches the house. I was already awake when you went downstairs." He touched her cheek, his thumb gently stroking her skin. "Did you really think I'd let anything happen to you? I thought I thought I could handle it. Thought I could talk him down. You did handle it, Lucas said, his gaze admiring. You kept him talking. Kept him from doing something stupid until help arrived. He kissed her forehead. That takes courage. I was terrified. Courage isn't the absence of fear, Kara. It's acting despite it. They stood there in the foyer, holding each other, the silence punctuated only by the distant hum of the city, until the SUV finally pulled away, its taillights disappearing into the night. I need to call Rachel, Sarah said suddenly, pulling away. Rachel, the woman I placed today. If Marcus found me this easily, it wasn't easy. He's been planning this for months, according to the reports Vincent sent me. He's obsessed. But your foundation clients, they're protected by layers of security and privacy protocols. Marcus knew where you lived because you used to live with him. Rachel's ex won't have that advantage. You're sure? I'm sure. But call her if it'll make you feel better. Sarah did, despite the late hour. Rachel answered on the second ring, clearly not sleeping either. I'm fine, Sarah assured her. But I wanted you to know you're safe. Whatever happens, whoever comes looking, you're protected. I promise you that. How can you promise that? Sarah glanced at her husband, at the gun he'd laid on the hall table, at the security monitors showing guards still patrolling the perimeter. Because I have resources, she said, her voice steady. And I'm not afraid to use them. After she hung up, Luca locked up the house. The clicks and whirs of the security system, a stark reminder of their reality, and led her back upstairs. Neither of them would sleep, but at least they could try. He called you a criminal, Sarah said as they climbed into bed, the silk sheets cool against her skin. Marcus, he called you a mobster. I am. Are you still? Luca was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the shadows dancing on the ceiling. Parts of my family are. I've tried to legitimize everything, clean up the business, but there are still connections, still favors owed and debts to be paid, still moments when the old ways are necessary. He turned to face her, his eyes searching hers in the dim light. Does that bother you? It should, but it doesn't. I keep thinking about all the women who need help, who need protection from men like Marcus, who need someone willing to operate outside the system when the system fails them. Sarah traced patterns on his chest, her fingers following the lines of his muscles. The foundation operates on legal channels, restraining orders, lawyers, official processes. But sometimes that's not enough. Sometimes women need someone who will actually make the threat disappear. That's a dangerous line of thinking, Lucas said, his voice low. I know, but Marcus had a gun tonight. The legal system didn't stop him. You did. Sarah, I'm not saying we should become vigilantes. I'm saying that sometimes maybe having a foot in both worlds is useful. Legal when possible, other options when necessary. Luca pulled her closer, his arm tightening around her. You've changed. You've changed me. No, you've just become more of who you always were. Someone strong enough to do what needs doing. Sarah thought about the woman she'd been at that restaurant, thought about the woman she was now, running a foundation, married to a complicated man with a dangerous past, standing up to her ex-fiancé without flinching. He's really not coming back, she asked quietly, needing the reassurance. He's really not. By morning, he'll be in custody. His lawyers will get him out eventually, but by then he'll understand that coming near you again would be the last mistake he ever makes. Luca's arms tightened around her. I take care of what's mine, and you, Sarah Moretti, are mine. Possessive. Absolutely. I'm yours, she agreed, tilting her head up to kiss him. But you're also mine. Yes, I am. They finally fell asleep as dawn was breaking, tangled together, protected by walls and gates and armed men, and the certain knowledge that they were stronger together than apart. When Sarah woke hours later, sunlight streaming through the windows, there was a note on Luca's pillow, written in his familiar, bold script. Asterisk Marcus is in custody. Won't make bail. Vincent found 2 more foundation clients who need emergency placement. Office called. 3 interview requests for your program. Also, my mother wants us for dinner someday. Says it's mandatory. I told her we'd be there. Love you. Asterisk L. Sarah smiled and reached for her phone. There was work to do. Women to help. Lives to change. But first, she sent a text to Jennifer. Asterisk, remember when you said I'd end up with either a prince or a mob boss? The response came immediately. Asterisk, and I was right. You got both. Sarah laughed and got out of bed. She had a foundation to run, a complicated husband to love, and a second chance at life that she'd fought hard to earn. The past was behind her. Marcus was gone, and the future spread out ahead like an open road. She got dressed, made coffee, and went to change the world, one woman at a